Yes, Professor Arturo, can you hear us, sir?
Yes, please. I'm
Yes, sir.
here.
Okay, sir. So we'll be starting with the session now, sir.
Okay.
Let me first introduce you to our participants.
Yes.
A very warm welcome to you, sir, and to one and all present here. On behalf of Galgotias University, I, Dr. Vandana Sharma, welcome our speaker, Dr. Arturo Palaming, Head of Department, Sur University College, Sultanate of Oman, for the invited talk on formulation of theoretical and conceptual framework of the research study. Dr. Arturo Palaming is a Bachelor of Secondary Education with specialization in social sciences, English, biology at Pangasinan State University, Philippines. He graduated and finished his Masters of Arts in Teaching in 1991 and Masters of Art in Teaching English as Foreign Language in 1996. He received his doctorate degree in 2004, majoring in applied linguistics. He finished his certificate, diploma, and advanced diploma in TOEFL in 2006 at American TESOL Institute, Arizona, USA, and had a face-to-face teaching in Japan and Thailand. A holder of a certificate in teaching English grammar, business language, English teaching. He was a GICA scholar, recently graduated with a postdoctoral degree in strategic management and leadership at Philippines, Christian University, Manila, Philippines. He has been in teaching profession for more than 20 years and assigned to various managerial, administrative, English teaching positions in the Philippines and in the Sultanate of Oman. He received several awards, citations, published articles, research in the field of English, educational technology, teaching strategies, management, and leadership. He has attended seminars, conferences, workshops in the Philippines and Oman. He is an active resource person at conferences, both national and international, and he wrote two books entitled as Approaches and Strategies in Teaching and Values Upheld by Students. At present, he is member of English Language and Values Upheld by Students. Sir is a lifetime member of CMLI Research Association, Penang, Malaysia. On behalf of Galgotias University, sir, we welcome you and thank you for accepting our invitation, sir, despite your busy schedule. I
Okay.
request all participants to make most session. Now I
Okay.
request, sir, to please start with the session, sir. Over to you, sir.
Okay. Professor Sharma, thank you very much for that introduction. And to all the participants, I will be talking about the formulation of theoretical and conceptual framework. And this is on the basis of my experience in the field of research. So you will notice along the way in my presentation that they are the product of my experiences as well as some of my inputs are coming from the lectures that I have before in the other universities as invited guests. So let me share with you my slides then. So, so there you are. So I will be starting my talk on the formulation of theoretical, and then it will be followed by a conceptual framework of the research study. Now, actually, these two, theoretical and conceptual framework, because of its tedious requirement and it's because of its difficulty to formulate, some institution were not able to, they are disregarding this already, or they are not making it as a part or a major part of the research proposal and the final final thesis. or dissertation. Now, some institution also, they incorporate this part or theoretical and conceptual framework in chapter 2, which is the review of related literature and studies. After that, they are going to have the theoretical framework. Some institution, they deleted this, but for me as a researcher, this is very important because this will build up the theories and concepts of your study. So let me start my talk with a general definition of what is a framework. Now, when we say framework here, it is a structure or it is a foundation. That is the simplest meaning. So when we talk of framework, it is a support, okay? Sometimes it is also noted as a guide. Now, because of this, it supports or it guides so that you can expand further. How could you expand further in your studies, or how could you build up your studies if the support that you are having or that you are looking at is limited? That's why you need a framework. So there are two kinds of framework. It could be a theoretical framework or a conceptual framework. So when we talk of a framework, this is a base, a structure of something. Since the foundation, or this is the foundation of a structure, then you need to make it as rigid or as strong as possible. So the ideas that you should have to present, or the ideas that you are going to come up with, should have to be the foundation or the structure of your study. Knowing the framework, then it will be easier for the candidate, or it will be easier for the researcher to build up the other parts of the research. So when we talk about a framework, how are you going to do it, or how are you going to create a framework? First, you need to identify the categories of information. That is the very first thing. You need to categorize the information so that there will be what we call a cohesion or unison of your information. What are the categories? How are you going to formulate these categories? So you go back, or you have to look at your title. Now, in looking at your title, then you can have a group of words that will be forming, or that will be grouped into one and considered as category. Or you go back to your statement of the problem. So from the statement of the problem, you are going to group again a categories of information. And then from that information, or from that group, then you are going to create your framework. You have to develop your representation. So for example, in your problem number 1, you are going to look at the profile. That is the profile category, meaning that these are the profile that you want to look at. So the profile again could be still subdivided or can be categorized into a simple category or groupings. Now from that groupings, it brown out, or it comes out another category, which means it could be a perception of group. So what are the perceptions that you are going to look at? Is it the perception of teachers? Or is it the perception of engineers? Or is it a perception of mothers? Or is a perception of teenagers? And toward that perception, you will form another group, which is what kind of perception? What is the perceptions that you're going to format? The perception towards the COVID-19 pandemic. So at least there is what we call categorization of your informations. Now, from there, why is it you need to have a framework? So that you will have a build-up structure. You can now make your building up of instruction and information, and this will lead to a more concrete, and it will lead to a more solid foundation of your research. There, you can have the ability to solve the complex problem, which especially then you can have a design of your framework. Whether this design, it could be a model or it could be a principles. Now, let us move on to a theoretical framework. Now, in the formulation of your theoretical framework, you should have to look at some theories or theory first. Now, if you don't know, if you are not that aware of what is the theory, then you don't know what are those concepts that you're going to look at. So when we talk of theory, these are set of concepts. And what do you mean by concepts? Concepts means these are ideas. These are explanations. These are valid explanation to a situations. This is concepts. Now, it could also be a models. Okay? It could also be a principles. Now, a principles is a statement that will try to explain something, or it could explain these principles are a statement that will explain the phenomenon, like the principles of practice makes perfect. This is a statement which means that from practice, you are going to have a constant practice, then you have to get it perfectly. Now, from that, it can be a principles, and it could be a theory. Now, another one, when you talk of theory, it could be a definition. Now, this definition, if you are going to take the dictionary, it could be a lexical definition, or we call that a dictionary definition. Now, if you take it from the context of how it will be used in your study, then it will be an operational definition. Now, from there, you are going to define something, or you are going to establish the definition on the basis of what is the importance of the word as it used in your study. That's why, for example, let's say you are going to use the feeling of happiness. Now, the feeling of happiness is very relative to everyone. For me, I have a simple definition of what is the happiness. But for others, they have also another definition. Now, on how you are going to use it in your framework, that is the time that you are going to build up. Now, from these concepts, principles, definitions that you're going to write, they make sense of a phenomenon by determining the relationship among the variables. Or when we talk of variables here, these are the words or the concepts that you are going to study, or that you are going to focus in your study. Excuse me. Now, theories are acceptable explanation of a situation, established by validated by experiment and evidences. Well, you might argue that these are theories. They are not yet proven to be law, or they are not yet proven to be a law, for example. Yes, that's correct. Theories are explanation or acceptable explanation in the absence of a law or principles. So you are looking for law of gravitation, for example. There is already a law that will try to explain that. But how about phenomenon or situation that there is no law anymore, or there is no explanations? And then you have to go to your theories. You have to look at theories. You have to look at principles. And you have to look at definitions. And from there, you are going to build up your own definitions, or you are going to build up your framework. Now, why is it important to have a theory? Because it is important to have a theory because this is a systematic way of understanding events. You can explain something, you can explain the situation, or you can explain the event, but what is the theory that you are leaning on, or what is the theory that serve as your foundation in the explanation of a situation or event? Other words, if you are explaining something or you are giving a situation, you are explaining the situation without any foundation, it means to say that it will come to be an opinion. Yes, it will become an opinion. And you know, opinion is the lowest kind of argument that we should have to look at. And it is not based on research anymore. But if you are going to explain something, or if you are going to understand something or events or a situation, and it will be backed up by a theory, then this theory will serve as your foundation. And from that, it will become a scholarly explanation of something, or a scholarly explanation of an event, because you are backed up by a theory, or you are backed up by a proven phenomenon or a situation. Okay. Now, how are you going to explain this theory? Or how are you going to explain this theory? You can explain it in so different, in many times, or in many forms, I should say. Now you can describe it, which is the descriptive. By merely describing, you can give your explanation, you can give your discussion, and it could also be a comparison of two things, which is relational. Or it could be an explanatory, meaning to say you are going to explain a phenomenon and then back up by a theory. And so you are explaining. Now, you can also give a correlation, or meaning that you are going to give a correlation, or how are these words are affected by different factors. And that is what we call a correlations. You are correlating it because it is a theory. There is a theory that will back you up. Like the absorption of knowledge is being affected by the age of a certain person. Now, if you are going to look at that statement, that is just a statement. But if you are going to back up that statement, that the knowledge or acquisition of knowledge is conditioned by the age of a certain person, then that statement will make it as a strong foundation of your claim, or a strong foundation of what you are saying. And so that is correlational. You are making a correlation of concept of age and knowledge. Or maybe you can say sexuality or gender. Male are more inclined to absorb knowledge critically than female. And so that is a statement. But if you are going to back up that with a theory, okay? But if you are going to back up that with a theory, then it will become a good foundation or a good structure of the idea. And that is what we call correlational. Now, if I am a researcher, then what should I have to be easier for me to understand a theoretical framework? Then you should have a skill of theoretical analysis. This is only the skill that you should have to master, which is the theoretical analysis. If you don't know how to, if you don't have these skills, then it will be difficult for you to establish your theoretical framework. Because in a theoretical analysis, at least 5 different theories coming from the different sources. Yes. So you are going to analyze them. You are going to establish their relationship. You are going to establish their descriptive similarities. And you are going to establish their descriptive similarities and differences. So from there, it will be difficult for a scholars or researcher if your theoretical analysis skill is very shallow, or you say you did not master these skills. So this is a skill by a researcher in the formulation of theoretical framework in the research. Because in establishing your theoretical framework, you do a lot of analysis. Let's say theory A, how is it related to theory B, and how is it differentiated? Now theory A, B, C, how they are related and how they are differentiated. From there, you will encounter a lot of words. You are going to encounter a lot of informations. And from these informations, you are going to build up your theoretical framework. And you are going to make your decision. So your decisioning process, in order to obtain the correct theoretical framework, then this is the skill that you should have to master. Okay. Now, what is meant by theoretical framework? As I have said, from this definition, it holds a strong support. These are the theories that will give a strong support to your idea or to your claim as a researcher. If I am the researcher, I will say that, or I will claim that the performance of the students in this time or amidst the pandemic is being disturbed by their kind of emotions within the family. This is the statement that I am, or this is the statement that I am saying. For example, now, if I will back up this statement with a framework or with a theory, then it will become a theoretical framework. So therefore, the progression of learning, it should be from cognitive to associative to autonomous phrases using a knowledge, skill-based exposure, and practice to learning situation over time. Now, what do you mean by this? So, theoretical framework starts from the mind or cognitive. So you have to think. You have to think. You have to look at the situation. You have to think and look at the situation. So it starts from your cognition, or it starts from your mind. From your mind, you are going to formulate your sentence, or you are going to say your statement. Now, from your statement, how are you going to compare this and associate it with the other variables or the other factors? Then it will become an autonomous phrase, meaning to say that phrase is your own phrase, your own thinking, your own, a product of your critical cognitive mind. So from there, you are going to build up your theories. So you are going to start searching. You are going to start searching your theories. Okay? So from that theory, then you can see now the differences. So you are now building up your framework. You are now building up your foundation. And from that foundation, then you can create your own model. Okay? So, and what do you mean by a theoretical definition? So when we talk of theoretical definition, it's a proposed way of thinking potentially related events. So this is what you call now your cognitive definitions. You are now going to build up words from your mind, and that you are going to define it on the basis of what is your understanding. And so that is your theoretical definition or theoretical concept of definition. Let's say, for example, I will not go further. I will give the example of happiness. So for me, what is a happy person? So from this definition, I will make some brainstorming that a happy person is a person with the money. Then I will say that, is it? So I am making now a definition of theoretical definition of the concept. A happy person is a person with absence of sickness. Is it? So you're just going to build up. You are now building up your theoretical definitions. So where you say a happy person is a person that the family are talking together, they are sharing knowledge together, and they have no problems at all. That is also a theoretical definitions of happiness. For me, a happiness is when I have a promotion, I receive a recognition, or I receive a recommendation from my boss or to my office. To others, definition of happiness means to have an increase in terms of salary. That is also a happiness. Now, from that brainstorming or theoretical definition that you have established in your mind, then come up with your own definitions. So by looking at that and coming up with your own definitions, then you will see where is the focus of your theoretical framework. Where is the focus of my study now? Or what is the focus of my study? Is it a happiness for because of promotion? Or is it a happiness in the absence of sickness? Is it a happiness in terms of peace? Or is it a happiness in terms of recognition, self-recognition? Or a happiness in terms of a happy family? Now, these are what we call your theoretical definitions. So for theoretical definitions, then you're going to have a potential related or relationship of the events. You are now making a relationship of all the variables. Okay? Now, why theoretical framework is important? Now, theoretical framework is important because, as I have said, it's a theory-driven approach, meaning that this will give you a good structure, a good foundation, a strong foundation of what a good idea you are going to come up with. So if you are going to talk something, then you are going to back up by a theory, and then they will say that this is a research driven idea. Okay, so they will accept that because it's a phenomenon, it's a theory, and then it's also a well-defined argument. If you have a well-defined argument, meaning that these are situations that are accepted, and so since these are phenomenon that or these are well-defined, then it means to say that argument has no basis for argument anymore because this is the correct one. This is a well-defined. And it serves as a validity, meaning to say it's a valid claim or it's a valid situations. Now, from the theoretical framework, you are going to build up. How are you going to build up there? So it means that you should have an interrelated or interrelationship of the concepts. You have to play with the concepts. You have to ask questions because your inquiry or inquisitive mind leads to a research. Do you know that? That if you are going to ask questions several times, or inquiry leads to a research. So from there, you are going to look at the interrelationship of concepts, situations, then you are going to build up your structure. Now, how do you start? How are you going to start your theoretical framework? So start with the thesis title and the problem. Look at your title. Look at your problem. From there, you can see that your problem gives you a lot of theories or a lot of words. So you just write down, just write down those words, and you call that as categorization. You are making a category. Because if you are making a category, then you will know already what are the things that you are going to research or what are the things that you are going to explain because you know already your categories. So where can you get your categories? Get it from your title and get it from your research problem. From there, you write the category in words or single words or simple words. Then you have to group them. By knowing these simple steps, then you can have now, oh, okay, now I know my category. My first category is I'm going to look at the category of age, how age is being affected by the performance, or how age is being affected by the level of happiness of a person, or how age is being affected by the performance of the person. So now you are going to build up and try to make your research. Because they will not come to you, I should say. These researches will not come to you, but what is your contribution is that you have to have what we call theoretical analysis. That is the skill that you should have to have, or that is the skill only. Analyze it. You need to have an analysis. Now, from there, you can have your review of related literature. So now you already know your category. You know already your categories. You know already the topic that you're going to look at. The words are already there. Then it's time for you to look at some other literature, other related literature. Now, the title, Review of Related Literature. Literature are, how do you define it? When you say literature, it's simply the definition. She, S-H-E. That is the definition in applied linguistics. When we talk of literature, it's the definition she, S-H-E. What is S? Significant happenings and events. That is the definition of literature. Any important happenings and events in the life of a person or in any situation is you call that as literature. So if there is a significant events or significant happenings that will try to answer your questions, and that is a literature. Now, what kind of literature? Related literature from the different different words and categories that you have identified in your problem and in your thesis title. Okay? Now, there are many words, or why should theoretical framework, what does theoretical framework include? What are we going to include there? Now, look at variables. Now, what is variables? In a simple definition, when we talk of variable, these are words that you want to study. That is just the simple definition. These are the words that affects your study. So any words that will affect your study or your topic is your variables. So if my problem, for example, is about the behavior of attitudes and behavior of teenagers amidst the pandemic, or amidst the pandemic, or online teaching or online learning, what are those variables that affects their behavior? Maybe we could say that one of the behavior there is what kind of behavior are you going to have? Attitudes and behavior, lukewarm behaviors, meaning to say they are afraid of manipulating. They are not that good in terms of the manipulation of technology. Or we call that as afraid of technology, technical know-how. They don't know it. That is their behavior. Or maybe they are depressed simply because of pandemic. Or maybe because they are somewhat, there is an anger, feeling or behavior of anger, attitude of anger, simply because they cannot go to school and they are being in enclosed space. To be in enclosed space is not, it's not their nature. So these are what we call variables. You are looking into the performance of student in the midst pandemic, but there are some other factors that will try to affect your study, and that is your variables. Anything that affects the study is considered for me as a variables. Okay? So these are the things that you should have to look into, the variables. What else? After looking at the variables, you are going to look at the relationship of things. So you are going to zero in, your idea that what is the importance of this in my study? That is the immediate question. Now, if you can questions, then the theory that you are holding or the theory that you have found is correct and congruent with your study. But if you cannot answer it, then disregard that. It means to say that it does not fit to be a theory that you are going to place it in your study, simply because you cannot answer the question. Theoretical analysis should always come in all the time. That's why you should have the skill of theoretical analysis. You need to make an analysis of that. Okay? Now, how to create a theoretical framework? Or let's say, in the selection of a theory, what are the things that you shall have to keep in mind? You have to keep in mind only 3. Appropriateness. Is the theory appropriate to my study? If not, delete. Ease of application, which means that, is this applicable to my study? If you cannot answer that, then that theory, you have to disregard that. Can you explain it? Because if you explain it, you can say it in your own words without affecting the meaning, then you are going to make an explanatory power. You can explain it. So these are the things that you should have. If you cannot explain it, then this is the theory that you are not that you are looking for. Only three. Is it appropriate? Yes. If it is not appropriate, then disregard. Can you apply it here in my study? Yes, yes. Will you explain it? If you cannot explain, then that's not the theory that you are looking for. Now, I will give you example. In the following examples, you can build up your theoretical framework. So to build your theoretical framework, you have to follow these steps. Identify your key concepts, meaning to say these are the words that you should have to look at. Where can you find them? In your title and in your sub-problems or to your problems. This concept often have a multiple definitions. See? Which means that the definition of this concept, do not limit it. Do not make a limitation of your definition. You need to explore. Maybe my definition is different from your definitions. So if I am going to define in my own operational definitions, then I could understand you better. That this is the definitions that you are looking for and that you are going to that you are explaining in your study. Then I could understand you better that my definition is not the definition that you are looking for. Then I will be better understand your study. I will be better understand your framework. Now, example. The problem statement and research questions, Company X is struggling with the problem that many online customers do not return to make a subsequent purchases. So this is now the problem. Going further, management wants to increase customer loyalty and believes that improved customer satisfaction will play a major role in achieving this goal. So, number 2 statement is a statement coming from the researcher. See, this is the statement coming from the researcher. While problem statement number 1 is stated number 1 is the study. This is the study. Okay? So, if statement number 2 or statement number 2 is the statement of the researcher, excuse me, how are you going to back up that with a theoretical framework or a theory? How are you going to back up this with a theory? So what are you going to look at? You are going to look at on the customer satisfactions. What is your objective? To increase the customer loyalty. So this is your objective. How are you going to increase the customer loyalty? So you are going to explain it in a research question. How can the satisfaction of Company X online customer be improved to increase their loyalty? So you are going to look at some theories, concepts, and principles about customer loyalty and customer satisfaction. These two concepts, you are going to compare it. You are going to look at a lot of definition, theories to build up your theoretical framework. And this is already your theoretical framework. So you are going to zero in your discussion on customer loyalty and customer satisfaction. So by that, you are creating a theory or theoretical framework. You are making a relationship of these two. Okay? Now, after that, you need to evaluate and explain relevant theories. So how are you going to explain this? You need to explain it by your related or literature review. So you get a lot of explanation coming from different sources. You are going to look at the writings, studies of other people, put them together, and that is your literature review. Okay, so are these theories? No, they are not theories. They are just concepts, or they are just what we call explanation about the theory that you are looking for. Okay. Now, if you're going to look at the literature review and the theoretical framework, how they are different. Because you said that after looking at the variables, customer satisfaction and customer loyalty, you are going to look at some literature review. But you said that we are going to build up our theories. So from there, it seems that there is a confusion already. So let us make a clear definitions or comparison of a literature review and a theoretical framework. So when we talk of literature review, is a critical evaluation of existing published works or researches. So we are sold already to that. We know already that these are published or unpublished research of researches coming from different research person or researcher. So while theoretical framework is a component in research that introduces and describes the theory behind the research problem. So the meaning of this is after you have collected these published materials, researches, evaluate. You need to evaluate. You need to go to your theoretical analysis. From there, you can build up your theoretical framework. So from there, literature review, you can write your theoretical framework. Another one is it explore what has already been written about the topic. That is literature review. So there is a exploration, there is a what we call intensive, in-depth explanation of the study. That is literature. Now, how about in terms of theoretical? It is a conceptual analytical approach the researcher is going to take up in order to fill in the gap. This is what we call your theoretical framework. So, how are you going to do that? You have found out that this study is related to this study, related to this study, and this is related to this study. So you have a lot of literature already. Now, point up, where is the gap now? There is always a gap. You cannot say that, I cannot find any gap. No. There is always a gap from this different literature review that you have. Apply your skill of theoretical analysis, you will find out the gap. A gap is just a small, minor questions that will be coming from you as a researcher. It is a small space that is coming that you have discovered from the different presentations, then you have discovered that this is the small gap that they identify. And from that, you need to build up your theoretical framework. So therefore, in order to identify the gap further, you need to have a backward looking. You need to look at backward. You need to look at the studies before. You need to look at the studies 5 years before. Maybe those studies will no longer be related up to now, up to this time. So you look at those things. Now, from there, you have what we call backward looking. From that, analyze it, then forward. What will be your study? If these are the backward ideas that I discover, then what will be the forward? What will be my stand as a researcher? Then you can build up your theoretical framework from there. Now, you might ask me, a theoretical framework requires a lot of pages? No, it does not require a lot of pages. Maybe 1 to 2 pages, so long as you can explain fully the structure of what your study is and how is it different from the other and previous researches. That will be a strong foundation of your theoretical framework. Now, you try to prove it in your theoretical framework that this theory will back you up from the identified gap that you have, or from the identified gap that you have in your study. These are the theories that will back me up. Okay. So from that time, then you can see that your theoretical framework is already a strong foundation that will support your claim. Okay? So any questions so far from this before I will go to the conceptual framework? If you have any questions. So if you don't have any questions, then I will go to the next, which is the conceptual framework, which is different also from theoretical framework. So this time it would be a different presentation, which is all about the formulation of your conceptual framework. In the formulation of conceptual framework, it will be the basis of in the formulation of your conceptual framework is your variables itself, or what are those things that you want to study. So before going further, let us have the definition of a concept, because conceptual framework came from a root word concept. So this is an idea that has been formally developed and organized. So if you're going to present a certain concept, then you are going to explain it formally and then organize it in such a way that the ideas are connected from one another. Then that is a concept, or a formulation of a concept, which is different from a theory. A theory means these are concepts, model, principles, or definitions that will explain the phenomenon or explain variables. But a concept is the explanation of words. How are you going to organize and explain these words? They are what we call the concepts, or the formation of a concepts. So therefore, what do you mean by concepts? These are synthesis of literature, or synthesis of writings in order or how to explain a phenomenon. Meaning, If you are going to explain a phenomenon, then you are going to explain the relationship of things. So you are going to look at the statement of the problem again, and you are going, in order to build up your conceptual framework. So in the building up of your conceptual framework, you are going to look at your variables at most. Or first, you're going to look at variables. Then you're going to look at what is the process that you're going to have and what will be the output. Because in building up your conceptual framework, you should have what we call an output also. What will be an output of your study? So going further, when we talk of conceptual framework, is an analytical tool with several variation of contexts. It is used to make conceptual distinction and organize ideas. Strong conceptual framework captures something real and do this in a way that is easy to remember and apply, which means that if you are going to write your conceptual framework, they are in a diagram or they are in figures so that they will be easily understand the flow of your study and what will be the final product of your study. Because of this presentation, then you can have an easy understanding on how the activities or how your research is being conducted. So let us look at here. So from this, we are going to look at the purpose of conceptual framework. Now, the purpose of conceptual framework is considered to be the roadmap of your study, which means when you say roadmap, this is considered as it will explain the start and it will come up with it will come up to the finish. So you will start from here and you will end up from there. So that's why it's called a roadmap. It's your guide. So it is also a presentation of the different variables and how these variables are related to one another. They are being related to one another. So in a conceptual framework, you are now establishing your own concepts on the basis of what is the uniqueness of your study. You are proving there, you are making to prove that your study is different from the other studies that you have read. Okay? That's why you need to have a conceptual framework. My study is different from the other study simply because of the concepts that I am going to study. In the study of researcher number 1, he was not able to prove that age affects the absorption of knowledge. But in my study, I will prove it that age affects. In the study of researcher number 2, he did not prove that gender is a factor that affects the acquisition of skills. Now, in my study, I will prove in my conceptual framework that age does affect the absorption of skills. So these are the things that you are going to look at. You are now making to prove that your study is unique and there is a contribution of you as a researcher in the field of science or in the field of research. Because it's useless if you don't know, but if it is useless that if you don't have a contribution. What is your unique contribution? Aside from your recommendation, you are making a recommendation. then what is your contribution in the world of science or in the field of research if you are just making it a duplication of their study? It's useless. You just sleep because you are just making a duplication. And duplication is allowed. Yes, it is allowed, but this is the lowest kind of research in the field of in the field of scientific thinking, or in the field of scientific thinking, I mean. So you have to look at and identify what is your contribution as a researcher. So explain in your conceptual framework. Now, in this conceptual framework, you are going to differentiate it from theoretical so that you know the boundaries where you are going to have. Now, in your theoretical framework, it's a general or broad ideas in which the study belong. You are just making an explanation back up with theories. General, it's a general. You are not saying that this group is affected by this and this group is not affected by this concept. No, it's a general term. Having this, it will affect the performance of the group. Having this, it will affect the performance of the student. General. But when we talk of conceptual framework, this is very specific. You can say that this situation is affects this the performance of student or grade 8 or class 12 student. Very specific. So you are going to narrow it. You are making it too narrow. Very specific. So you identified only. So if you identify that way, then this concept or this idea is applicable only to class 12. The whole of class 12 or students who are considered as class 12. Okay, that is a conceptual framework. And number 2 is that it's based on the existing theories in the literature and has tested and validated by scholars for theory. So they are being proven to be true, and they are already been used, explained by phenomenon. They can be used as to explain a phenomenon. That's theoretical because it's taken from an author. But when we talk of conceptual framework, this is based on the concepts which are the main variables of the study. Meaning to say that you are now proposing, you are now explaining that these variables are the concepts that you are going to explain and tested, and will become a part of your contributions to the world of science, because this is new. Okay. How about number 3? It is a form or models. So a theoretical framework is a model, a results. This is the results already. But when we talk of conceptual framework, it explains the relationship. It's your researcher's own constructed model. This is where your creativity as a researcher on how to relate those variables from one another, this is your conceptual framework already. You have to use your critical mind how these variables affect by these variables. So you have to make your own models. You have to make your own models already. Let us have to use your critical mind. And it is being, it could also be adapted. Adapted models. You can adapt a models, but you need to restructure it. You need to restructure the model. Because if you're just going to copy and put the variables inside or explain the variables, you're just copying the model. you need to restructure the model so that it will become your own conceptual framework. And that is the beauty of a conceptual framework, because as a researcher, you are now injecting your own models. You are now making your own models. You are doing your own models already. So you cannot make also a model if you don't know how to correlate the variables, how this model affected by this model. And from this correlational, what will be my contribution, or what will be the output of my study? So you have to come to think of it. So conceptual framework is merely the work of the researcher itself. Now you are presenting it the new. You are presenting the new ideas to the reader. Now, number 4, it designs is not accepted. Its design is not accepted, but it is a proposal of the researcher's answer to the research problem he has defined. Well, the design is not accepted, meaning to say, at this moment, the design is not yet accepted. But once you have proven as a researcher, once you have proven that the design that you have created is correct and defined, then later they will accept it. That is only the process of accepting learnings, or the absorption of learnings. Our scientists before did that. At the very end, their theories or their ideas were not accepted. But look at now. We are using their ideas. They are already proven to be true. They are proven already that they are considered as a theory, or we call that they are considered as a valid explanation of a phenomenon. Just like this, conceptual framework, you did it, you did your model, you show your model. Well, it's not accepted at hands, but as time goes on, they will have to accept it. But just want to prove to them that this is the model that I have made. And let us accept it, or let us have to analyze it, whether it is a correct or incorrect incorrect model. So this is just a conceptual framework. But the most important thing there is you need to define. I'm always saying that because in the definition, you will be cleared. Everything will be cleared. Number 5, it offers a focal point of approaching the unknown research specific in the field of inquiry, while your conceptual framework, it shows logically. So in theoretical framework, this is a point of inquiry, meaning that if there is a question, they will answer. Okay? If there is a question, they will answer. Okay? If there is a question, they will answer. And that is a theory. Let's say the principles of simple to complex. So everything here on earth, it will start from the simplest and it will become complicated. That's right. That's a phenomenon. And what is that? The theory of simplicity and complex to complex. And that is a theory. And that is a phenomenon that will explain our life situation. Even in the computer, it becomes simple and now it becomes complicated. And that is a theory that we'll try to explain. But in terms of conceptual framework, this is a logical inquiry, which means that these are the analysis that I have. Then, from the analysis that I have, I arrange the explanation in a logical order. When you talk of logical, means all doubts and all questions are being anticipated. Now, if all doubts and questions are being anticipated, then you are going to explain it. That is a logical arrangement, or that's a logical explanations. You are now making a logical explanation of the something or of something. And that is your conceptual framework. Now, the last one, theoretical framework is our interrelated propositions are being cut down into a single theory. So, from the different theories, you will cut it down into a single theory. But in your in your conceptual framework, you are not going to cut it down, but interrelate, explain, and try to assert, meaning to say, try to prove to us, the reader, that this is the correct concepts. Okay? Now, and then the last, it is, these theories are already tested, but it is not yet proven in some other points. But it will be a valid to explain something or to be used to explain something. That is theoretical. But in conceptual, it aims of encouraging the development of a theory, meaning this is the pre-explanation in order to come up with a theory. Okay? So, in order to come up with a theory, you need first a conceptual framework, or you need a concept first so that you can explain. Now, in the construction of your conceptual framework, you can be guided by the different structure or different styles. So let us take them. You can have this example number 1. You can have present, or you can present your conceptual framework by looking at the independent variables and dependent variables, which means that box are presented into two, and they are affected, or these two boxes are affected by each other or interrelated. Now, the quantity of gabi, or we call that is the leaves in this side, leaf extract used. And then on the other side, it says that it will try to lessen your blood glucose level. See? So from this, one variables, you could manipulate it, and other variables, you cannot manipulate it. Right? You cannot manipulate it. Which of these two variables you cannot manipulate? Of course, the changes in the blood pressure. You cannot change that. And you cannot manipulate that. But you can manipulate the quantity of leaves extract. So I could say, in the first treatment, I will say, I will make it 20 ml extract. So you drink 20 ml of gabi extract. On the second, I will make it 30. So I am manipulating it. So I am manipulating the other box. But I could not manipulate the results or the second box. This is what we call one style in the presentation of your conceptual framework. Which of these box you are going to manipulate or you are going to change, and which of these box you cannot control. From there, you can make your explanation. You can make your own explanation, and from that explanation, it will come up with a new knowledge. Now, let us look at example number 2. Now, in the example number 2, you can use also the input process output, which means the IPO pattern. Now, from the IPO pattern, you are going to input in, meaning to say you are going to put in as your first initial variables, the sex, the years level, the social media being used. Now, from this, the process means what are the things that you are going to do in order to analyze the data? What are the process that you are going to do in order to come up with the output? Now, by doing this process, you will come up with an output level of effectiveness of using social media in the politics, literacy of college students. So they are affected by sex, the year level, and the social media use. So it means to say that you can see here the continuous flow of the variables until you come up with an idea. So what will be now your concept? Your concept will be, as an output, is the effectiveness of social media. Does it affect by whether you are a male or a female? Or does it affect, or is it effective on the year level as a student? As you grow and progress to your highest level, what is the effectiveness of the social media to you? Or what is your literacy level? Or on the kind of social media that you are using. If you are exposed too much in Facebook, Twitter, and other accounts, or other kind of social media at that, will it affect the effectiveness of your social media literacy? Then you need to explain that. Once you have explained that logically, then that will be the contributional concept. That is your contribution already to science. Okay? Now, let us look at example number 3. In the example number 3, this is also a model, okay? Or we call that a flow chart model, wherein you are going to do a lot of, do a lot of variables, and it is presumed that these variables are being affected by different factors. And from the different factors, you will analyze it that the community inhabitants, their satisfaction. What will be the level of their satisfactions if they have this kind of factors? So you will have 2, 4, 6 variables on the side. And then from the 6 variables, it's categorized again into different 3 variables factors: economic factors, social factors, and societal factors. And from there, you are going to zero in your idea that these 3 factors affects the satisfaction level of the community inhabitants or community people. Which of these 3 has a highest level of satisfaction? Is it from the environmental factors, societal factors, or economic factors? Well, it's the product. What is the product of your research? Then that will be accepted in terms of science. Now, if you found out that environmental factors has considered to be the highest factors in terms of the satisfaction level of your population, of the community, then how is it? Then you have to improve your community. You need to have a what we call community analysis. And from the analysis, it come out that you are going to improve. You have to improve. And this is your contribution. Who said that the community or the environment has a greater factor in the satisfaction? It's the research. My research said it. Or this is the thing that I have found out. Then we should have to address this. So that is now your contribution towards science. Some other studies, they said society. Some other studies, they have economic. But you have different. You have found out that environment is the factor that will satisfy the level of community inhabitants. So now that the people are environmental conscious already. So if people are environmentally conscious, then you need to improve your environment. So why I'm saying this? Because this is the product of my research, or this is the product of your research as stated in your conceptual framework. See? Now, in the construction of your conceptual framework, you need to have 4. Identify your variables, as I have said. So look at your variables, categorize them. That is your number 1. Then think how the variables are related by putting an arrow. So put an arrow, those variables that are related, and put an arrow for those variables that are related. Categorize them. Now, you will ask me, suppose it somehow partially affect, then the line will be broken line. You are going to put a not heavy line, but it should be a broken line. It somehow affect. That is how you are going to present it. And then create your diagram or create your model. In the creation of your model, I have already explained to you. You can use your independent, dependent variables. You can use your input, process, output, or you can use your concept mapping. You are going to make your own model. You are free to get your model. But the most important thing there, if you are going to create your model, you need to explain it. You need to make a detailed explanation because this is your concept. You are the one who is going to make it as a researcher. Then explain. This is what I'm saying. Then you explain your concepts. You explain your model. Once you explain your model, then finish. It means to say that you have already your conceptual framework. So from here, I am going to stop, and I hope that you have understand my lecture or talk this session. So
thank you so much, Professor. Thank you so much. You have actually explained it very well. That's really very great of you, sir. Because many a times the literature review, what we think, and in general, the perception is of that few papers, you have to read it horizontally. You may have to think of like what others have written, and then you have to work on what others have written and what you are going to write. But the way you have explained that how it is different from like literature review, is different from theoretical concept,
yes,
conceptual framework. Also, you have talked about the various variables that are the keys which are
yes.
going to lead you towards the research. This is actually very, very important, sir.
Okay.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so
Yes,
much
sir.
for your inputs. And I'm sure most of our participants are from our PhD scholars. They all are researchers and they are from different backgrounds. So
Okay.
I'm sure they have learned a lot from this session specifically. They would have understood the clear definition of how it is to be executed, like starting from the literature review, the conceptual framework, the theories of it, the assumptions, the negations also. You also talked about the negations, which is
Yeah.
quite challenging for some people to understand that how it is different from having an assumption and having a negation. Both are acceptable in research. So thank you so much. We'll take some questions. If the participants are having some questions, we'll take those questions with your permission, sir.
Yes, please.
Okay. So I request all participants, if you have any question, please put your questions in the chat window and we'll take it one by one.
I would like to add regarding this is a research. We have if we have an IT or in the field of computer
Yes, sir.
studies and IT, they have a different kind of research, you know, because in the field of IT, they have a documentation. After the documentation, they have what we call the system or program system. So it,
Yes,
they have a different kind of in terms of research, but they could have or they could use the theoretical framework and conceptual framework.
absolutely, sir.
Uh, but you know,
Absolutely.
IT they have different kind of research formation.
Sir, in my opinion, the entire process of research is very horizontal. It has got a very horizontal landscape. So in IT also, the theories of conceptual framework applies.
Yes.
Unless or until you're not clear with the idea and the research problem, it is difficult to initiate and complete it
Mm,
further. It is difficult. So definitely it is applicable here only for IT people also.
mm.
So there are no questions, sir, from the audience. Your session has been very nice. Thank you so much for your inputs and your time. Thank you so much, sir.
It's
Thank
my
you.
pleasure to
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for
Okay, thank
joining
you very
us.
much. Okay. Bye bye, everyone. Until
Bye,
next
sir.
time, if you have any problem, then I will accommodate all your requests. Bye
Thank you
bye,
so much,
Doctor
sir.
Dr. Sharma.
Thank you, sir.
Bye
Thank you
bye,
so much.
everyone. Bye.
Thank you, sir. I request, okay, thank you so much. Thank you. You have been a very patientful audience. I request all of you to please fill up the feedback form and your certificates will be generated once you fill up the form. And if you have any issues related to the form or maybe some arrangements, you may just ask us. You have our number also, you have our email addresses also. You can reach us. So the session was live on YouTube, and anyone who has joined late or who wants to listen to Dr. Arturo Flaming again can visit our YouTube channel, Galgotias University's YouTube channel, and you can revisit the entire link. It is uploaded there. Okay, I'm just sharing the feedback form with all of you again.